Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Cathy Fisher, and she's going to tell us about her near-death experience. And I think he was what, 21 years old? 23? How old were you? And you froze. I'm over myself here. Cathy, I don't know if you can hear me, but you froze up. There you're
Yeah,
back.
so did you. It just sort of
Okay.
froze. Okay.
Okay. We're both froze. It's cold.
Let me,
January.
I don't know. Okay. Maybe. I don't know. It might be me. I don't know.
Okay. How old were you when you had your NDE?
I was 21 when I had the experience, and I'm 63 now. So there's been a couple of years in there.
Okay. All right. So start wherever you like and take as long as you like.
Okay. When I was 21 years old, I had what's typically called a near-death experience. I kind of actually prefer temporary death experience, but that's not common phraseology. And I can't say that I made that up myself. I picked it up off the internet, but I like it. But for simplicity, I'll call it near-death experience. And I was 21 years old. And I was at the time when it happened in my parents' home, which had been my home maybe a little bit before. And I was in college. I was in my last year. And I was home for a spring break. And I had pneumonia. And I had it pretty severely, but I don't think I knew quite how badly I had it. And I had been doing a whole lot of sleeping mostly. And I had not been in the hospital or anything like that, but I had been to the doctor and gotten some antibiotics. I'm not sure if I had maybe just had one or just started it, but it was mostly unmedicated at that point. So I was, as pretty typical, getting ready to go to sleep. I had just, as they say, hit the wall, and it was time to just drop off. And this time it felt different. It felt so much more relaxing. And I don't know if you've ever had the experience when you've had a cold that's minor, but you feel really relaxed and it's almost like nothing hurts and it's a better feel for sleep. That's
Froze up. So I'm hoping you come back. There you are. You froze
okay.
up. Okay.
Okay.
So
So
you
as
just
I was
started to fall
going to
asleep.
sleep,
Okay.
I was going to sleep and I felt less pain and I felt so good. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, I have no pain. This is a great sleep. And then I thought, this doesn't feel like a sleep. I feel like I'm rising. And I realized I was kind of lifting up over my body. And my first thought was, oh, I'm dreaming. But then it's like, no, this is real. And I looked back down and I could see myself sleeping in the bed below me. And I went, oh my gosh, I'm feeling no pain. And it just dawned on me, I'm dying. I'm actually leaving. And it didn't scare me. It
And you froze up. So I'm gonna guess you're gonna come back here in a minute. There you are. There you are.
so as I rose up and looked behind me and saw my body, and I had no pain. I mean, it just felt so wonderful. And I was surprised I was dying, but not startled. But I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm actually dying. I'm gone. And I entered what a lot of people classically describe as a tunnel. And to me, it felt circular like a tunnel, but it also at the same time felt both infinite yet cozy. It's really hard to describe. It was fairly dark, but not like pitch black. And as I went, I was going so fast. And these lights, like stars, were like I was going past them. And I realized at some point, those are not just stars, those are people. I mean, I'm recognizing their energy. And I realized that those were people who had gone on before me, perhaps ancestors, perhaps people I know. And I didn't recognize them individually, but as each one went past, there was something about them that I knew. So I was going really fast, and it's hard to describe, but while I knew I was kind of moving forward, at the same time, I can see 360 degrees all around me, even though I'm facing forward, as it were. Very hard to describe. And it seemed like I was just going the speed of light or something. It was just hugely fast, but it's not scary. It's not like when you're in a car and going fast. And I found myself getting closer and closer to this beautiful, absolutely brilliant white light. And it's hard to describe that color of white because it's like it's all colors at once, but it's still white and it's so bright, but it doesn't hurt your eyes or cause any glare. It's just beautiful warmth, unlike anything you can see here on Earth. And from this light radiated so or in meditation where I had a taste of that, but nothing to the degree that this was. It was an all-encompassing feeling. It's just phenomenal. And I realized that that light was what I would call God, that this represented the creator of all things. It is everything that is the source of all, as I would call it, God. And I could see sort of in it aspects of what I could feel were like God, and Jesus was kind of in there, and some things that I weren't quite sure what were also in there, but it was so beautiful and so loving. I mean, it's just a phenomenal experience. So while I was sort of in this light, but mostly in front of this light, the first thing I heard was, "It's not your time yet, so you're going to go back." And I already knew this intuitively, so it was confirming what I knew. And at the same time, I'm going, wow, but it would sure be nice to stay. But yeah, you're right. I'm not done, and I'll be going back. So it's like, okay, yeah, all right. And when I say I heard, it's like hearing in your mind's ear. It's telepathic. It's like hearing in your heart, but the words were so clear. Like when you read the newspaper, if you ever sometimes find yourself hearing your own voice, it was kind of like that, but it like wasn't my voice. And I began to receive things from this light that I couldn't say, oh, it was a list of this, and this. As time has gone on, I have found some things that I received, but at the moment of receiving them, it was totally experiential. So I was receiving some knowledge and some understanding and a lot of love and a lot of peace and a lot of, I couldn't even tell you what, and it was just beautiful. All of those things, yet still retaining who I was, kind of as an individual, but it was my best, most spirit self, not me with all the junk. And so there I was kind of in my wholeness, experiencing all of that in its wholeness. And it all beyond description, but it just felt perfect. Just felt perfect beyond anything we can experience. So I had some type of exchanges there, couldn't exactly tell you what, although I can say some of the things that I understood later. And pretty much before I could say much more, I'm going back to my body. And again, it's kind of funny because I'm going backwards the way I came, yet I can see 360. So how I know I'm going backwards, I can't tell you. It's just a little hard to describe. But again, I'm passing these lights and these beings going by. And I'm just in awe in a beautiful place with this experience. And as I get back to my body, I kind of thudded back in. I wouldn't say that it hurt, but it was a thump. And it was mildly uncomfortable. And from that moment on, a little bit of pain started coming back. Now, the first thing that I noticed was that my body was cold to me, kind of chilly cold and stiff. But as things happened, it's like I start to feel like things are moving in my body, maybe blood flow or something, I don't know what. And pain started to come back in. I didn't have as much pain as I did when I left, but there was still pain, and I could still tell I still had the pneumonia. It was still pretty well embedded in my chest. The experience was so much less to somebody else, but I knew I had died. I knew I had come into the presence of God and experienced it in an unbelievable way. I knew I had received beautiful gifts and things from God and had returned back with more whatever it was that I needed with which to carry on my life and to do the things that I'm supposed to do, whatever that may be. So that's the basicness of the story. From that point, I would say that my world really opened up because my experience of God, I had a kind of typical experience of a lot of people of my age and where I'm from. I actually live in the Appalachian part of Virginia, it's a small city. So we're technically the Bible Belt. And I thinking about it. I didn't quite have the words, but I remember experiencing God. So what I found, because when I was in front of God, when I was in my death experience, God was so far beyond anything I had ever conceived, heard of, or even imagined that I realized there is no box for God. I mean, even as I'm describing it now, I'm sure I'm still putting God in a box. But there is no box for God. And God is so far past every experience that we have. So it opened me up to understand that everything I had learned, heard, thought, been taught, read, and I'm a big reader, that was, if anything, just a drop in a bucket. So it made me more open to the possibility of other things being a potential path to God or a potential way of understanding things in order to understand who we are to God. So that opened me up to the potential of believing in other things. Now, from a Christian background, of course, I would also then, if there was something I wanted to ask God about, I would pray and say, God, I just really want to know what's true. And so I would often start my prayers, and that's how I would begin my seeking. So my seeking became much more open-ended. My experiences, I'd had a lot of pretty miraculous experiences before then, but they became smaller miracles, but more constant. Just the things that God would learn, the things that God showed me while I was there, I guess, that I don't remember seeing, but that I just understood when I was back. I kind of understood things better, like how it is that suffering fits into the scheme of things, not as a lesson to be learned for something that you did, but just as in this is what happens in the world. Such that I would call intuitive gifts. And I had them early on, but they always kind of wigged me out a little bit. And when I came back, I was much more comfortable with those gifts because I just understood it's just happening in spirit. That's all it is. No need to panic. Yeah, you may know something and you don't know why you know it. And there may not be a big reason for you to know it, but whatever it is, you've just tapped into the Spirit of God. And God knows all things. And therefore, you just have this little tiny slice of that. So don't panic. Just relax in whatever gift you were given. Perhaps there's a reason and you will use it. But if not, just know that you're touching God, and that's okay. That's okay. So many things have happened since then. I am much more open in general, much less anxious. I was an anxious little puppy before that event. Not even now, on the other hand, it's like, okay, this is a more temporary thing on this earth where we are now. So in a way, you feel a little more like a stranger in a way. On the other hand, you feel so much more at home, or at least I do, because God is so infused into the experience that how can you not be at home because God is there? So it's a really a funny balance between this is not your forever place. This is not all that you've ever known. It's not all you ever will know. So if it changes, don't worry so much. There's so much more to be had. So while I never had really much of a fear of dying before, I definitely do not have a fear of dying now. It is absolutely beautiful. I mean, there are just not words. And you would think something like that would just freak you out, but it doesn't. There's something about that connection with spirit, and it just gives you that sense of, oh, yeah, this is home. This is so, so good.
Were you still sick when you come back? Froze, I don't know. Were you still sick when you come back, or
I was, but I wasn't as sick. Now, interestingly, I did experience a miraculous healing about a week and a half later. I went to a church that I'd been going to, and there was a woman there that she called it the Ministry of David. I don't know why, but she could play the organ, and she was really good, but healing would just kind of happen and kind of flow. And as I went in, I was still pretty sick, and I was keeping a distance from people, so I was like sitting way in the back. But as she was just playing what most churches would call preludes before church, all of a sudden the pneumonia just like sucked out of my chest into here, just like dissipated, and it was gone. So probably what would have taken me a couple more months to recover was just immediately gone. And that was incredible also.
I'm assuming back then you didn't know what this was called or what to make of it?
I did not. This was back in probably 1980, maybe 81. I think I had heard of people having them before, but it was kind of a new thing to hear about, and I hadn't paid much attention. I think I was kind of like, okay, cool, because I didn't like doubt it, nor did I buy it, if that makes any sense. But I hadn't heard all the details about it, and I certainly, to my knowledge, hadn't talked to anybody that had one. Interestingly, I think we tend to find each other because I have several friends now, and we've all had one. I have 4 immediate friends, and one of them has had 2 of them. And I think we sort of find our way to each other somehow through God. And so we've been able to share some of those experiences. And I have, once I finally got words, some kind of words for what happened to me, and I was able to like a mini class that week for people that wanted to ask questions. And I love that time when people ask you questions because they make you think about things that maybe you hadn't thought about. And one of them that occurred to me, that came to me in the form of a question that I hadn't thought about, was this. A gentleman asked me, a lot of people ask, are you still you and all that? And I kind of addressed that before, but he said, well, did you feel like a woman when you were in front of the light? And I said, that's really interesting. Now that you bring it up, I didn't feel like anything. I felt like everything and nothing. I didn't have a race. I didn't have a gender. I didn't have an orientation. I would not have known if I were a student working, single, anything. I was just the essence of who God made me to be in that moment without anything that we would call a label or a tag. And
And you're back.
yeah, you froze on me or I froze on you, but it froze somewhere. Yeah.
Okay. Did you feel like you come back with any gifts?
Yeah, mostly understanding. Mostly I just know some things I didn't know before. And it can be as simple as how to fix something. And that may sound crazy, but like I can look at a ceiling and something is wrong with it and I'll know how to plaster it and fix it. Well, that wasn't originally what I did, but I just kind of know. It's not for everything. I wish I could fix my car. That's not one of them I got. But sometimes I just know things. My ability to take life as it comes was a huge gift. I mean, that may not sound like a classical gift you can put, but man, that's just huge. My ability to um, I see patterns better than I used to see. So now when I read music, instead of looking at each individual note going up the scale, I can look at a pattern and go, oh, that's an E flat scale with a G flat or something like that, if that makes any sense. So I'm seeing a pattern and I can read it much better without reading it note by note by note. So I would say just a lot of gaps were filled in. My intuitive gifts are stronger. Um, I just know things. I don't know how to say that. And that sounds really egotistical. It's not that at all. I just kind of know. Because this has to come from God. It's like sometimes I will meet people and I just know something about them, something past or something they're going through. Sometimes even what's going on in their body when they don't know what they have. Like I met a lady at a restaurant one time and I just heard in my mind, she has lung cancer and she doesn't know. And I thought, what in the world do I do with this? So I waited till her companion got up and went to the bathroom. And I walked over to her and I said, okay, excuse me, this is going to seem just a little bit weird, but, and she says, oh, I'm all about the weird. It's okay. I said, well, good. I said, sometimes I just kind of sense things about people. And she says, yeah. I said, now, I also knew you don't just go up to tell somebody, you just don't go up and say, hey, you've got lung cancer. That is not your
Right.
job to diagnose. Okay. But I said, I am feeling like there's something going on in your chest, like maybe you've got a cough or some congestion or something. She says, yeah, I do. And it's gotten a little worse lately. And I said, she says, well, thank you very much, because that had gotten bad. And she says, when I get back to Chicago, that's the first thing I'll do. I'll go see my doctor. And I said, good. And I said, because I knew I just knew that that's what she had. And there was also another woman in a similar context. I met her at a meeting at a sort of a church situation. And I knew when I looked at her that she had MS. And again, it's one of those things I just know. And she sat in front of me and we were having an exchange. This was designed to be sort of like speed dating. It was kind of like speed spirit moments where we sit down and talk. And she said, she sat down and all I could hear was MS, MS, MS as she sat. She says, you know, I've been having these headaches lately. I said, you have? She says, yeah. I says, is it really kind of interrupting your life a lot? something neurological? She said, yes, I am. And I said, well, she says, what should I do? I said, well, this may sound really silly and it's a no-brainer, but go see your doctor. Tell your doctor what you're experiencing, thinking about anything that's changed. And if you feel like it's something neurological, you tell your doctor, because that may give them a hint. And if your doctor doesn't listen, you find another doctor. And then what came out of her mouth was, I'm afraid that it's MS because my mother had MS and da-da-da-da-da. And I went, well, I can certainly understand why that would be concerning. I said, well, if that's what it is, you're obviously very early in whatever it's going on. And I said, but your best bet is just go to the doctor. And I'm glad that you brought it up. And I hope that everything goes well. And then we had the rest of our whatever talk. But it's just like sometimes spirit just lets me know something. Once I met a young lady who was 17 and I just knew that her dad. I said, yeah, I just kind of sense it. She says, can you see him? And I said, I don't know if it's him I'm seeing. I said, but I'm seeing someone with reddish hair, which was odd to me because she was very dark. She says, yes, that's him. And I said, yeah. And so I just went on. It was almost like a reading or something. I said, he's fine. He's at peace and he's doing really well. And I said, obviously, he wants you to know that he's fine. So I went on and talked with her about sometimes what happens with people when they pass. It's not always what we've been taught. And one of the things that I knew when I came back was that any type of disability, including mental disabilities or disorders or mental illness that you have when you pass, those go away because those are a body thing. So when you pass away and you're on the other side, you are no longer stuck with those things. And so he is free from like the distresses that passed or of somebody else, and I'm seeing them like stand up out of a wheelchair and walk away or something like that. So that's spirit telling me, hey, this is healing. This is how it happens. So some of these things are tying together the loose ends to kind of figure these things out. But the main thing is God really is love. And no matter what you have learned about God that is good or not good, solid or not solid about who God actually is, God is love. And if whatever you're thinking lines up with love, it's probably lining up with God. If it's not lining up with God, then you've probably thrown a little of your own stuff in there that you've picked up along the way that's not as healthy. And so I think the objective for all of us in this world is to try to see through our own stuff, our own wounds. We're saying the right things if it's about love. And if it's not, then we need to regroup. We need to step back and regroup. And it's not our job to, we often say don't judge people. But I would go even further. It's not even our job to have an opinion about somebody else, about what they're doing, how they're living their life, or how they're raising their kids, or why you would have spent the money differently or anything else. It's not our job to even have an opinion. God has given us all this amazing mind, and we have to tap into our mind and all the things that we've learned, good, bad, ugly, pretty, whatever, and learn to hear around that and to hear what is best for us, what God would like for us. And we might be able to help somebody with that a little bit, but it's only if they want that kind of assistance and only if we know any way to help. One, you can't give away what you don't have. You can always support somebody, even if you don't understand where they're coming from, but you can't give away patience if you don't have any. And if something is something you're going to have an opinion about and it's not about you, it's not your job to have an opinion. And we need to learn to step back and not have opinions about it. It's tricky. It's very tricky because we learned right from wrong by having an opinion about something. And it's not a bad place to start, but we have to grow out of that and grow past that and get to the point where we are just living in the spirit enough to go, yeah, this is the path, or no, this is not the way. And if we see somebody else is probably outside of what would be a clear spiritual path, it's still not our job to have an opinion. And that's tricky.
I never thought about it before till you were talking that I've noticed I sometimes sense when someone's cheating. Like I met this woman at the fair one time. And I knew she's dating a friend of ours, and I just looked right at her. She looked right at me. And it's like she knew that I knew. Like I didn't know till just now. It's like I have no basis for it all. I just know. And I found out later she was. It's just you get those feelings about people like, huh, they're cheating. It's just a knowing. I used to be
Yeah,
able
you
to
just
make a
know.
good matchmaker. I don't do that so much anymore. But
I know. I have very rarely ever match made. I've only put 3 couples together, and so far they've stayed together forever. And
yeah.
I don't know why. It's just kind of like, I just know this is a match. But yeah, it is. I think a lot of us sense who's a cheater. Just
Yeah.
like sometimes you can walk into an area and you can tell who's married and who's not, even if you don't see a ring, because there's an energy. It's all energy. It's all about energy. And some of us pick up on them a little more easily than others. But sometimes too, spirit is kind of knocking on our minds to say, hey, pay attention to this. Pay attention to this sign because it's for you to understand, either for yourself or for somebody else. I mean, you may know that about a friend just so that when it happens, you're not so taken aback that you can't respond to her with a amount of love and support. I mean, who knows why you know what you know sometimes, but yeah. God is an amazing thing. I mean, it's like every angle is covered. I mean, more than we ever knew there were angles of is covered because love covers everything. It really does. It really does.
How long was it before you started talking publicly about it?
Wow. Publicly.
I know there probably wasn't too many opportunities before.
No, no,
In
it
the
wasn't the
beginning.
thing to talk about publicly back in the day. And to add to that, my circle was a little more conservative, almost evangelical at the time. It took me actually probably at least 30 years to talk about it. Some of it was how profound it was. Some of it was like that. I've gotten more comfortable speaking in public. And it took me a while to go, okay, this is a little woo-woo for some people, but I'm going to speak it anyway. Because I didn't want to lose their attention with regard to other things that could potentially help them with growing. And because my call in a way is being a teacher, I didn't want to give so much information so fast that it overwhelmed people and they just left without thinking about it. So part of that was me holding back because I wasn't sure how much information to give. But when I feel the unction to say something or do something, I tend to do it now. I have yet to have a time when I really felt a pull or a push to say something to somebody, even if it sounded whackadelic. Very, maybe one time did they look at me like I had 3 heads. And I didn't worry about it because later on, if it's my job to plant a seed, I try to plant a seed. So that was a long roundabout way of saying it took me a really long time, but for a lot of different reasons.
Are you a teacher by profession?
Not anymore. I used to teach music. I'll be honest with you, I hated it. I I think I'm just naturally kind of a teacher. It came from an experience as a kid. I had half a year in kindergarten. Kindergarten was not normal when I was a child. And I had this really sweet teachers in a little Quaker kindergarten, which was an exchange for my mom teaching. And when I went to first grade, I had something akin to Attila the Hun for a first grade teacher. This woman was mean, and I had her again for a second year, and that just it started to drown my spirit. I about how to be a good teacher. So I've done a fair amount of teaching by default. And I've always been fairly good at explaining to people how to do something with a certain amount of patience. But after the NDE, my patience is much more off the charts for people. I see where they're coming from. My compassion runs out. I'm a little less patient with technology and things than I am with people, but I'm trying to do better there too.
Yeah, that patience word, I'm not a fan.
No,
So my husband can tell you.
no, and it's hard. I mean, I was one of those kids. I wanted to get up and go. I didn't want to take a nap. I didn't want to miss anything. I was go, 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 go. Don't want to stop and wait for an explanation. I was the go, go, go. And it was really funny. I was given the task of giving a sermon about I ended up being in a restaurant where a guy had a heart attack and his wife needed to get to the hospital and she didn't drive, didn't have a ride. So I took her. And on the way, one part of the road was shut off. But anyway, this 1 hour trip turned into 4.5 hours, and all I could do was laugh because I'm like, this is my lesson on patience. And it just cracked me up. So you just never know what's going to happen with that patience stuff. But yeah, it's tough sometimes.
Did you write a book or you?
I have not written a book. I've thought about it from time to time. I think I prefer talking about it. Part of my thing is I'm still kind of I like to do things rather than like sit and write. I also don't do well on a computer. I have some neuropathy in my hand from a disc that blew in my neck, and I can't type for very long. It becomes like a baseball mitt, and I can't do anything. So by the time my brain is warmed up and I'm rolling, my hand is done. So I don't know that I'm going to write a book. I may not, but I'll certainly talk about it. And um, so we'll just see if that ever happens. Right now, I'm not feeling the urge.
I'm glad I wrote mine when I did, like 5 years ago, because I don't have the stamina now. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't.
Well, and see, I'm the same way. I mean, I'm only 63, but it's like I'm worn out. I'm tired. And
Too.
it's not just that I'm calling myself old, but I've been a caregiver a lot. I'm technically disabled, and it takes a lot of energy for me to do what I do. And
You froze out, so I don't know if I missed something there.
I don't know. I said we're not all meant to write a book, even if we experience it.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, some of us got to be there to buy a book, you know. So
I know
that's
you
like,
said you like to read, so
oh, I love
I
to
don't
read.
have the energy for that.
I find that hard too. In fact, this is going to sound crazy. I fought being on like social media or Facebook for the longest time. But I used to read more books, and my attention span, I'm like a type A reader, especially now. And I've always been that way. I'm like, don't spend 4 pages telling me how beautiful the sunset is with the colors. Just say the sunset was beautiful and move on.
Right.
So,
You know what irritates me is
so
recipes online. I don't want to know the whole story about your Aunt Bertha's meatloaf.
right,
Just give me the ingredients.
exactly. Give me the ingredients, give it in a bullet, preheat 350, put this in, put that, and call it. I'm the same way. But I have found that little snippets on like Facebook, or Boomer Book, as they call it appropriately, are very good, because I can read about whatever I want to read, and it's a really short story without a lot of detail. Be it archaeology, near-death experiences, or whatever. I can just go on and read a little bit, and I love it. So I am on Facebook a lot, and it's not because I'm addicted to it, but it's kind of my newspaper, and it's my entertainment, and a little of this, a little of that. So I love the short snippets, and so I'm enjoying it, even though I fought it for years.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or anything you need to cover?
No, not really. But the only thing that I would say to people, other than that part about love, which is essential, is don't dismiss anything immediately. Don't decide, well, that doesn't happen, or these things don't exist, or this person.
Wait till you come back before we say goodbye.
It comes to you for a reason. Even if it's not 100% right, it comes to you for a reason. So don't just dismiss things that appear before you. Just let it be, and think about, why is this sitting here before me? And maybe there's a connection for you there.
Yeah. I think a lot of times we don't pay attention to the miracles, the coincidences, there aren't coincidences, and yeah.
Yes.
And those
exactly.
knowings. So
Yeah, it is amazing. And sometimes it's usually just little things, which is why it's hard. For example, my partner and I were helping an older friend who had to move out and go into a nursing home. And the funny little coincidences were things like, okay, the trash can's full, and we're all in there, and we're all in our 60s and 70s helping her. And it's like, what are we going to do with this trash? And bam, the trash truck comes down the street and empties the trash. We're like, yes. And there were a whole bunch of little things like that that just kept happening. And I'm like, that's just God, that's just God. So it's the little things. Or you walk outside and you find that penny, or that feather, or that flower that reminds you of your loved one that passed, or something. Those aren't coincidences. Those are signs, and those are hellos. And
or suddenly smell a cigar or roses, and there's
oh,
no them
yes.
around.
Yes. Yeah. If anybody smells roses, I have learned that angels smell a lot like roses. So if you smell roses, there's probably an angel or some type of positive spiritual being around you. It's an amazing thing. It really
Yeah.
is. And if you feel your loved ones present around you, don't freak out. We're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. They're there for us. And it's really interesting, because in Hebrews it says that all talks about all the people that walked through faith, and then at the end it says, but these people didn't receive the end promise, because God provided a better thing for us, that without us they were not going to be made perfect. And that sounds a little wacky, but what it's saying is they're not going to perfection without us. We're all going together. And and they're around us for a reason. They're around us to support us, and we're all moving together. So if I, for example, let's just say, if I'm an alcoholic and I have a
Sorry about all the freezing.
that's okay, that humans have and do, with the help of those on the other side, whether we realize it or not. Now, I think one thing I would say is, don't get too stuck on the other side. Don't get stuck always waiting to hear from somebody who's passed on, or waiting to know about something, or getting like for those people who are into reincarnation or stuff, don't get too stuck studying that past life thing. You're here now with the situation you've got for a reason. And sure, other things are going to influence you, but the whole idea is you've got what you've got now for a reason, so use it and move with it. If you need something from that, it'll come to you when you need it. Kind of like the intuitive abilities. I don't sit around and myself and try to develop them. That's not my call. I know some people do feel that call. It's not mine. But I also know that whenever I have needed it, it's been there. And sometimes it's there when I'm not even sure why. But if it's there when you need it, you may not have to do like huge studies to get it to roll. But you just learn to kind of have faith in it. So I guess that's the thing I'm saying. And when I talk about God and when we talk about faith, we really are talking about believing and trusting in, not in the little teeny individuals. I believe in this, 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 and this, like some kind of a creed. But to just have faith that God is always after what's best for you, always there for your best interest. And even if you're going through something really, really rotten right now, and let's just be real, some things suck. They just suck. If you're going through the suck, well, just keep putting one foot in front of the other, because now is not forever.
Yeah.
It won't always be this way.
And there's not always justice.
No, not the way we see it, not here.
Yeah, not
There
like
will
the
be
movies.
later.
Yeah, the good guy don't
Not
always
like the
win.
movies.
There's not always a happy ending.
Now you can't always break bad and go Chuck Norris on somebody. It doesn't always work.
Okay. Well, so I'm going to wait till you come back and we'll say goodbye. Because you're still froze.
I know.
There.
It's doing these little things.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Cathy. It's been nice
Oh,
talking
you're
to
welcome, Peggy. Hey, it's been a pleasure, and it's nice to kind of meet you. And I look forward to seeing more about you. And thank you so much for reaching out.
you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.